London Cab this week we have TV actor who was in the 1970s TV series Here Come the Double Deckers, also leading actor in one of the greatest films ever made from 1980, Babylon, and founder of UK reggae group Aswad, the one and the only Brinsley Forde in the back.
Enough respect, Steve.
Yes. Hey, how you doing, my man?
I'm good, thanks. I'm glad you got me out of this rain.
Well, yeah, I mean, the weather could be a bit better, couldn't it?
Yeah, but I'm dry, so I'm happy. Do you know what I mean? And I'm sitting in a cab of a legend.
Exactly.
So go for it, Steve.
Exactly. No, I can't wait to chat to you. And you know, it's an honour to have you in the back of the cab.
Thanks, man.
Right, first kind of two questions I always ask is, where you from and what was it like growing up as a kid?
Well, I'm from the northwest of London, and how can I say? It was a good childhood. It was a good childhood, fun. I'm one of 7, so I had a lot of siblings. So you know, never lonely. And then my sister Lorna went to dancing classes. And one day I'd been shopping with my mother and she said to me, listen, will you go over and see if Lorna's finished? And I went over, I met this woman, Flavia Pickworth, who just looked at me and said, look, can you sing? And obviously I said yes, and so I ended up doing some concerts for her. She used kids, and she did a lot of work for cancer research. And later on I found out that she was the mother of Mike Hurst of the Springfields fame.
Wow.
So yeah, she got me my start. So I had, the first thing I did was for Children's Film Foundation, which for those who remember Saturday morning pictures, they were films starred by kids, for kids on Saturday mornings. That was pre the televisions, before we had children's programs.
That's right, and also obviously back then there was only, what, 2 or 3 channels?
BBC probably back then. It could have been, well no, probably ITV had sprung about then, but we are talking late 60s. And the TV would close.
That's right,
at 11 o'clock, and you'd have the, you know, we're going back into the days of pre-TV. I mean, I saw my first coloured TV at the audition in Cricklewood.
What kind of reaction did you have when you first see it in colour?
I fancied Yvonne Gulligon. So yeah, it was Wimbledon that I first watched on colour TV.
Wow, that's amazing. And what kind of music was you listening to back then?
I was listening to everything that you had in the charts. But obviously I listened to a lot of what would be ska or blue beat at that time, you know, family parties. I had a good friend in school, Reginald Fuller, whose brother Prince had a sound system, so you know, I would go and listen. So yeah, I was listening to all the music that inspired me.
And the Rocksteady and all that?
Yeah, definitely.
And was there kind of a certain selection of tunes back then which kind of blew you away?
Well, yeah, there was remembering them now. I mean, you had Alton Ellis, you know, the ska. You had I'm in the mood for ska.
How about that one?
Derek Morgan.
My Lollipop.
Yeah, I mean, well, My Boy Lollipop was a hit track. That was, you know, probably a number 1 or number 1, 2 track. So everyone knew that track.
That's right.
But I mean, I'm, you know, Pioneers, Long Shot, Kick the Bucket. I mean, what am I to do now? And growing up in the 70s, where, you know, we were like skinheads then. Do you know what I mean? And so Skinhead Moonstomp and You're My Lover, the early Trojan stuff, Moonlight Lover's one of my all-time favourites. You name it, we were listening to it.
And can you tell me about some of the early sound systems? Was there many sound systems back then in London? I mean, what kind of year are we talking about? Is this like late 60s?
If we're going late 60s, you would have had like house parties and stuff. It was more house parties. But like coming into, you know, the the 70s, which is where I'm really talking about there. You know, you ended up having Trojan, you had Coxsone, you had Duke Reed, Duke Vin, David Sound, and you know, so many sounds. And then you had sounds in Birmingham. So, gosh, there's sounds that I don't even remember. And at that time, we had more clubs that we could go to. So there were more clubs that were based for reggae music.
That's right, because it weren't just even a London thing, was it? Because the sound system thing was also going off in other parts of the UK as well.
All over. I mean, Coxsone probably started it here by travelling, was the sound system that travelled. But, you know, Nick's, I can't forget Nick's at Burton's in Cricklewood. So many sound systems.
That must have been an amazing time.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I mean, my first kind of early thing, like the first sound system I see was down in Fordham Park in New Cross.
Okay.
In the late 70s or 1980, and it blew me away because I'd never seen. I was into the reggae sound, but I'd never actually witnessed a sound system. And when I heard that bass and people were skanking, and it was just
that gets you when you hear that heavy bass, man.
Yeah, it blew me away. And you know, I mean, I loved the reggae sound anyway before that, but that like literally was the cream of the cake. Seeing the sound system play in Deptford.
Yeah. Oh wow.
It was absolutely amazing. And back in, actually it was 1970, you was in a TV series called Here Come the Double Deckers.
Yeah.
Which was about 7 kids who kind of messed around on some old red bus in the scrapyard.
Well, it was an old bus that they used as their den, and they had special ways to get in. And it was a fun time. It was made by 20th Century Fox. And the first thing that I did was the Magnificent Six and a Half, which was actually the forerunner to Here Come the Double Deckers. It was made by Harry Booth and Roy Simpson. They were the director and producer.
Yeah.
And they did things like On the Buses. They went to do On the Buses later.
That was legendary, On the Buses.
With Melvin Hayes.
That was so funny, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it was amazing. It was an amazing time. We had our own lot. And I remember once having a dressing room with Pete and Cushman on one side and the other guy on the other side. I mean, and just seeing the things that they recorded there. I mean, Elstree, Boreham Wood was the real studio then, and across the road you had the other studio.
So did you have like acting experience before you went on the TV series?
I didn't, but I mean, a lot of it is just, you know, your imagination and creating something and remembering your lines, really.
Yeah. And then going back to the music, I mean, Aswad formed, I think it was around, was it 74, 75?
Around 74, but there was a lot of things that went on before. I mean, I played with Junior English.
Yeah.
Junior English, and that's where I got a lot of my early experience in playing live.
Because I was going to say, because you played guitar, didn't you?
Yeah.
Well, you still do play guitar.
Yeah, but I played guitar. But I mean, one of the things that in hindsight, really, one of the first places I ever played reggae music was in the same hall where I actually started doing the acting.
Where was that?
In Wilston, in Beverell Hall.
Right.
It was a lot of the early stuff, and I remember there was. I can go back a little bit before that because we're still coming on the thing of music. While acting and you're not working, you always find something to do. And I was working at the Greengrocers in Neasden. And I was out the front one day. And do you remember the old Greengrocers? You had the tissue paper with the oranges stacked up. So I was putting a display up. And I looked to the right of me, and to this day, it's like a mirage. Walking towards me, I just came up to him and went, "But you're Peter Tosh."
Wow.
And there was Peter Tosh walking in Neasden. No. And I mentioned this to a friend of mine, Delray. And Delray said, "Yeah, they're staying around the corner." So we went around the corner, and sure enough, there was Bob Marley and the Wailers. This was when the band had just got together, so you had Family Man, you had Carlton Barrett, Wire, and obviously the 3 Wailers.
That must have blew your mind, because they must have been like so inspirational.
Well,
to you.
I was a big fan of the Wailers. I mean, back to the days where I had a little sound system called Youth Sound System. And so I'd been in the record shop. I think I must have had 7 cuts of one of the Wailers tracks. There was a bongo cut. I mean, so I was a big fan of them. And I went around there, and in the end I took my guitar and amps and stuff around to the house, and we used to jam, and family wanted me to play bass. So a lot of my early musical came also from that. But you know, we were doing bands, and we were doing things. We were rehearsing in the garage of my mum and dad. Joe Leo, one of the first persons I ended up going to the studio. We're taken to studio to do a track, and it was just, I think it was coming up to a time where I had been playing child parts in the theatre. I mean, I'd done James Bond, Diamonds Are Forever. I'd done, you know, lots of other things, Leo the Last, and I was growing up. I was learning about Rasta, and it was just a little bit difficult for me. There was no parts for young black actors. There was no parts for black actors at that time, and I kind of had to make a decision. What do I do? You know, it's that time in life, you know, and I kind of decided with music I could take it to its entirety. I could go to studio, I could record, I could do it. So kind of I leaned towards music, and later on I formed Aswad, and
wow.
The rest
is history. And what how did you get the name Aswad?
Found it in a book of African names, and I was looking for a word that would be very easy to say for European people, but had a meaning to it. And Aswad meant black, so we were telling our story from a black perspective. You know, we were young black kids growing up in England, so it was perfect.
And what was inspiring you to in your lyrics? Was it like everyday situations?
That was it. It was just about life in general, what we were experiencing. I believe that by the time, you know, we'd been touring and playing for a few years, even the European community started to experience, you know, with the 3-day week and the strikes and whatever, and people were beginning to go, oh God, I can identify with that. So, you know, that was I think one of the things that helped. And then we had Rock Against Racism, where it gave a stage to people who had something to say. So you ended up having bands that would never normally play together, to audiences that were at that time that never got
united
together.
Yeah.
So people got united through music, and it's, you know, someone who probably only listened to rock or pop suddenly went, oh, that's reggae, I kind of like that. Yeah, great. Yeah, I can
get into it.
Know, so this is what happened.
Well, that's the thing. Music unites people. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely. Universal language.
Yeah,
definitely.
And it's saved a lot of people's lives as well. And also,
just to touch that subject there, I remember meeting Nelson Mandela for the first time, and he said that it was at his thing at Wembley, and he said the music that you made or making was, when we heard this in prison, we knew that people were listening or paying attention to what was going on. So, you know, give thanks for that.
Yeah. And also, how did you get your name, Chaka B?
Well, Chaka B was really from the guitar.
Right.
It was the rhythm sound, and that was one of the first nicknames that they,
And who was in the original group?
In the original group, on bass was George Oban. On keyboards was Courtney Hemmings.
Yeah.
Sorry. Guitar was Donald Griffiths. Drums, Angus Gale, drummy Zeb. And at that time, because we were new to harmonies and stuff, Candy and Bonnie McKenzie would help us. Janet Kay as well, who later Silly Games fame.
Yeah. And what Warrior Charge, I must admit, that is one of my most favourite tracks, and also Promised Land as well. But Warrior Charge, I mean, can you tell me about kind of like the making of that? I mean, where did you make that? Where was it?
Well, if I go back a bit, while making Babylon, right, obviously there was a soundtrack to it. So, you know, I kept going, well, you know, what's happening with the soundtrack? What are we doing the soundtrack? And they said, oh, don't worry, we got it. Dennis is doing that. Dennis Bovill is doing that. And I think I was a little bit persistent. So, and at that time, people knew of Aswad. I mean, they knew that I was in Aswad. That's why they, you know, and they knew I had acting experience. So I think to pacify me, they go, well, you do the dub. You guys make the dub and Dennis will do the rest of the soundtrack. And so what would happen, I'd be in the film studios in the daytime and then with Aswad at night, and we'd work all night working on the tracks. And this is where we did a couple of tracks there. We did Warrior Charge and we did Hey Ja Children. And the idea for the dub in the film was that this dub would be the only thing that gave them a chance, because we were playing against a Shaka. And
so you needed a big tune, yeah.
But glad to say that Shaka heard it for the first time and ran over and said, what is that? And he took that and he won competition. So it actually did what it was supposed to have done in the film in real life, you know. Dennis and I are doing, because you know the film now has been released in America after 40 years.
No, I know.
And it's like, I think it's done 82 cities so far. So
yeah, I can't wait to talk about that.
Dennis and I have been encouraged to do the tour of the soundtrack.
I know, and you're doing Jazz Cafe.
And we're doing Jazz Cafe on the 19th, and I will be doing for the first time the Hey Ja Children, the full vocal.
And that's the 19th of July.
And I'll be doing a full version of Can't Take No More of That, so watch out for that.
Definitely. And I was going to say, Brins, what was touring like back then? You know, back in the day, back in the 70s. Was it hard?
No, I mean, we were post the early days. I toured with bands like the Cimarrons, and where we, you know, no hotels, no, you know, just in a van. You drove up and you drove back, and those were the hard days.
And there was no maps back then, was there? So I mean, sat navs.
There were no sat navs, but there were maps, and this is this is how we did it back in the day.
You had to read a map.
But I have to say that Aswad were kind of pre-sat navs, but we kind of moved in. I think one of the differences with Aswad, we had a PA. We used a PA. So we'd found that what would happen back in the day, you know, when the bands used two 12-inch column or two 12 columns, they had about four 12-inch speakers in them. After the sound system came off and the band would come on, quite often the band just sounded really flat and not, you know, and the sound system would turn up on them. But obviously, when Aswad came out, we came out with our one was a Vox sound system, so we had a big sound system, and sound system, or PA, I should say. And I know a couple of sounds that tried to turn up on us and turned up on them, and so yeah, we came out with a bang. We started using hotels and stuff, so we were kind of post the really hard days.
Did you make your own speaker as well?
Back in the day, for when I had a little sound system, but you know, by the time we were, I remember we used to go on Kilburn High Road. We'd go into the music stores there, and you never got a warm reception. Do you know what I mean? It was always a little bit like. And I remember on the day when we got our advance, we went in and we said, "Oh, can I have a look at that?" And sure enough, we bought it. And I always thought it was something that was just us. And I remember while working for VH1, we did Walking in Memphis, and my show came from Elvis Presley's living room. I actually did it from his jungle room, my show, and the place where he stood to record his last albums. And they told us a story that he went to buy this car, and he was just coming up and no one paid attention to him. And I realized that you know, for musicians, the story's the same anywhere. You know, you're not known. You go into a music store and nobody wants to pay. You know, it's this person's coming in looking at guitars for £1,000 or something. You know, so I realised it wasn't just us.
Wow. So, I mean, fashion was a big part back then. I mean, you know, people were rocking like the Gabiches, the Clark shoes, but even, can you tell me about the fashion as well, Brinsley?
Well, I mean, for me, I mean, it way back in the day, I mean, it was always a nice suit or whatever. And I'm talking about when I was a kid going to probably Prince's, do you know what I mean? And then I went through stages where I was a young skinhead. So, you know, I always had my felt hat, I had my Crombie, and I had my Parker. You know, I had my Lembretta TV 200.
Because it was probably coming towards the end of the mod.
It was the end of the mods. I mean, that was the end of the mod things, and basically you had this was the time where you had young English kids and young black kids getting together. I mean, this was the first thing. There was all the skinhead music and Max Romeo's Wet Dreams and stuff like that. That was happening. So I would have had my Harrington. I would have had my my boots. I would have had my then into the tonics.
Where did you go? Carnaby Street?
Carnaby Street to buy your brogues. Your brogues, and I remember
Harrington jacket.
Harrington jacket, Ben Sherman shirts, and I remember going to buy some GIs, and that was Brewer Street, I think, where went to buy those, and I paid 21 guineas for them. And I remember I got home and I did this whole thing of like going to my family. Funny, I got brogues on, you know, going, showing them, going, what is this? I remember my father came in and I did the whole thing to him and, you know, showing off my shoes. And he looked at him and he went, I said, Dad, these are 21 guineas. 21 guineas. And for those who don't know, 21 guineas was £20, 1 shilling.
So that was a lot of money then, wasn't it?
It's a lot of money at those times. Do you know what I mean? And you had to have your brogues and you had to have your GIs. GIs were the plain ones. Anyway, my father just went, go and have a look at my wedding picture. And I went, had a look at my dad's wedding picture that I've looked at for years. And there he was with brown and white brogues on. It was like, oh my! Wow. So fashion goes round, and then obviously with Aswad we had our own style. We had our hats and we had our long coats and stuff. So fashion's always been important in, you know, in dressing and having a slightly different style. But I mean, usually for me on stage I'll be a little bit different, not eccentric, but you know, it's always been important.
Did you have any clothes made for you as well? Or?
Oh, definitely. I mean, back in the day, you went to the tailors to do your suits and your tonic trousers.
That's right.
And you had 3 zips here, or you had this. I mean, no. You know, and going back to that, I remember hipsters. This was like in the 60s. I remember taking a girl out to the movies, and you know, I was feeling really good, and I had these hipsters, and you had these big white belts on and stuff. And I remember sitting in the pictures, and they were so itchy and all that, you know, and it was like, oh, it's a disaster. That was a fashion disaster.
Like heating up.
Yeah, no, because they were itchy on your legs. So, you know, you're trying to talk to someone, and you're like sitting there, and you don't want to. Oh.
Yeah. That's
but
funny.
then you had toppers shoes. We had a load of topper shoes, different shoes. So, yeah, there was lots of different styles.
Have you got anything from back then? Any clothing? Have you kept any?
No, not as much as I would like to. I mean, we had beavers, the hats.
Where was you getting your beavers from?
A good friend, Yvonne, sent them from America for me. Yvonne Cummins, and I actually saw her when I was in New York. She came down, and we were rushing, and we planned to you know, go out have dinner, but it was time, and I didn't realise she lived so far away. She's like 5 hours, but yeah, give thanks to her for that. She got all the beavers for the man.
Did you buy the beavers in like place like Brixton as well?
No. Beavers came from America.
Right.
This is why I was saying. This is why I mentioned that friend of. Mine.
So you couldn't really get them out.
Not really over here. Not till later on.
Yeah.
When we got ours, they were direct from
the States.
From the States. Yeah.
Wow. And can you tell me about the skanking as well? Did you used to do the skanking dance?
Skanking. I mean, it's always been with reggae a dance. You know,
it originally come from
ska,
Jamaica, didn't it?
The ska, everything, the mashed potato. Do you know, there's always been dances associated with the music. So, do you know, by the time the music kind of slowed down and it was Rude Boy, you know, like Shaka. I mean, just go to a Shaka dance and you see skanking. Do you know what I mean? But in Jamaica, there's every song has a dance practically. You know, I can't remember all the names of the dances, but yeah.
Well, like in hip hop, you got break dancing, body popping.
Yeah. But I mean,
different.
Reggae is really the root of a lot of the modern day music, because like the dub music took on a different element for the music. So it was about stripping things away, and the sound systems were then able, because basically in the early days there was an A side and a B side, and the sound systems would now take the B side and would use it for the toasters, or the MCs as it was called in that time. So, you know, the hip hop that we know today, you know, respects its roots in the reggae music.
When did you start going Notting Hill Carnival? Was you there like in early 70s?
In early 70s, yeah, I used to go before, and then I remember in 76 when we had just released our single. We had the album, and we just released 3 Babylon, and we were outside Basing Street and Lancaster Road. There was a stage, they put a stage up there, and we'd have these bright yellow t-shirts that were just done that were similar to the album covers. So we had all of our family and stuff there. And as I said, we just finished singing 3 Babylon. We were about to put our stuff into the van, and all of a sudden they said the police are coming. And that was it. We were right there on Basing Street.
Rushed by the police?
Yeah. That whole thing happened. We were there, but what really happened, we had to pack our things away, and by the time everything started, we then had to go and find our families, because a lot of our mothers and you know, our family were there, so we would go and find them. And a good friend, Mikey, who later was the manager, who became the manager, lived at 2 Lancaster Road, and that was the shelter that we made sure our families and everything were there.
What was the reason behind the raid? Did they just want to shut down the sound system?
I don't really know. Some people said that they were chasing someone. I don't honestly know. I know, you know, what happened, but the actual start, the event that caused them to all be chasing one person, I don't know. I don't know what it was, but I do know that, and I was asked this question just the other day, Metro, right? We had to go and play Metro that night, and I remember they were all crowded outside of Metro, and I honestly thought, I didn't know whether we would come out of there or not.
Where was Metro?
Metro in top of Ladbroke Grove. Right. Top of Ladbroke Grove, going towards Westbourne Grove.
Yeah, because a friend of mine, Akin as well, he had a question for you, and he said, what was it like performing with Burning Spear at the Rainbow Theatre in 1977?
Well, one of the things that I had decided on, you know, putting Aswad together, was that we were not going to go and back anyone. We wouldn't be one of those English backing bands that went and backed everyone, and we would do our own songs. It would be our songs, and that was it. I was writing at that time. But then there was a call one day that, look, Burning Spear is looking for, you know, would like us to work with him, and that was just seen as an honour, you know. And we did a small tour, and of course the gig that he mentioned, the Rainbow, was one of them. We played in Birmingham, I think Manchester, and a few other places. There was an album, a live album, and I think that was one of the times that people started respecting the band, because they all thought it was some artist from Jamaica. They didn't realise it was an English band. And later on, 1977, I think it was. We went to Jamaica to record, and some friends put a show together in Kingston, and we called Burning Spear out. We called Winston Rodney. So a lot of people in Jamaica hadn't seen Burning Spear, and the first time they saw Burning Spear was with Aswad in Kingston.
Wow. That's history right there, isn't it? And
Yeah.
was that like the first time you'd been to Jamaica?
No, maybe we'd been before. I'm not sure, but as a band, yeah.
And what did you must have loved it out there.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was a difficult time when we were out there, and it was a time of joy, and it was a time of a lot of troubles were out there, and there was a lot of political violence going on at the time, and what we didn't realise. What we would just go into the local, shops like Clark's Shoes, we'd buy Clark's Shoes, we'd buy Buckers. Over there, they were probably people that were affiliated with being gunmen or whatever. So at that time, Starsky and Hutch were two guys that were being searched by the police. And obviously we had two members of our crew that resembled one of them. So at times we got held up, we got stopped. It was a great experience. I mean, I think when you're away and these things happen, you're never quite frightened by it, because it's just like that experience and the adrenaline kicks in. But I remember going into Harry J Studios, and there was someone recording, and the next thing he came out, it was Jacob Miller. Do you know what I mean? He came out, Jacob Miller said, "Yeah, how's it going?" Da, 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 da. So yeah, it was all cool.
And Brinsley, in 1980, you was in the groundbreaking film was released called Babylon, which is about a young black guy from South London called Blue.
Your Manor down in Deptford.
I was going to say, is that where he was based?
We
in
filmed
Deptford?
a lot of it in Deptford.
And it's basically about a young black guy. He loses his job as a mechanic, and he has to deal with a lot of kind of issues around him.
I mean, really, what happened? Blue, the character.
Yeah.
It was condensed into a matter of a few days, but I mean, they were things that a lot of people, can identify with. Parents breaking up.
Yeah.
Or getting into trouble. Younger brothers and sisters. He actually not really broke up, but his girlfriend was kind of wanting to go to the Soul Club, and he wanted to go to the Roots Club. So all of his problems came about, in the matter of a week. And obviously he was out late one night, and back in the day we had this thing of sus. So, you could be picked up because they believed that you were doing or attempting something. So, that's what I found in America now. People can identify with it a lot more than they could in the early days.
And was it fun making the film?
Fantastic. It was,
You had
as
some
an actor, I mean, I had, and as we said, I had gone through that time where, searching, and it's like, what do I do? There's no parts for black actors. And to be offered a part like, in Babylon, it was a dream come true.
And there's a few big named actors. I mean, is it Mel Smith was in it?
Yeah, Mel Smith. Mel Smith was my boss.
Yeah, he was the head
boss in it. Yeah,
the main mechanic. He owned the garage, didn't he?
He owned the garage. Yeah.
And the film's written by Franco Rosso and Martin Stellman.
Martin Stellman. Yeah.
How did they come up with the idea? Have you got?
Well, part Dennis will tell you, because he went through from the Metro days when the police claimed that he was doing, so a lot of that must have influenced them, and they lived in the era. Do you know what I mean? But Martin. Do you remember Quadrophenia?
Yeah, of course.
Well, Martin wrote Quadrophenia.
He wrote that, didn't he?
He wrote Quadrophenia, and he's just done the other one.
Because Quadrophenia, I think was it 79?
Possibly, but that was the Who, and all the personalities
Dolce and all that.
Yeah. So no,
that was another groundbreaking film. Also, Scum as well. Remember Scum?
Yeah. I think he might have had something to do with either that or Watson Rubek did Clockwork Orange. But
Vicar, there were some big films.
I think they lived in your side of that side of South London. And they grew up, they had friends, and so this was something that they knew. They knew that energy, they knew that, and obviously Franco was an editor. And obviously they tried to get the film done, BBC or wherever, they tried to sell the idea, and it's one of those things where it just doesn't happen because people don't have the vision, and they decided to do it on their own.
And the big scene when we're playing Warrior Charge, you get on the mic like lion, and and the police raid the place. Where was that actually filmed?
In Deptford.
Oh, it's Deptford.
It's Deptford. Well, I remember while we were doing it, Carl Hallman, who played Ronnie.
Yeah.
While we were doing read-throughs, Carl was very adamant. He said, "Look, the police wouldn't bring dogs to wouldn't bring dogs to a place." And we said, "Yeah, of course they do." Anyway, luckily we found bits of footage that showed that. So it was a different time. It was a different time, but it was all, to be honest, the original ending was slightly different, that the police came in and all the guys were standing there, and it was a confrontation, and the character Blue would go up to the sound system, put a bit of music on and say, "Can't take no more of that," and a bottle would fly through the air and smash in the middle of the floor. But I believe at that time, the organisation that gives you the certificates, they were adamant that it had to have an X, because unless he was seen in prison feeling sorry for what he'd done, they couldn't, and they wanted it to be a film that families could watch.
Yeah, of course.
So they missed out on that. So they changed a lot of the ending, and a lot of even Blue's character was edited down because they didn't want him to look that vicious. Do you know what I mean?
Do you reckon there'd ever be a version coming out with that ending?
No, you can never say never. We talked. Sadly, Franco's not here anymore, but we talked about doing a Babylon 2, and it can still probably happen. But Martin did a lot of writing for Yardi, the Idris Elba film.
Oh, right.
So we never say never.
And back at that warehouse scene, when it's all like kicking off, whose sound system was that?
In the warehouse. In the warehouse. I mean, it was a makeshift sound system so that it could do that. But we used the guy's sound system, and his name's out. But he's in the he plays Watts in the movie,
right?
Where Archie goes and says, "Listen, I need a sound system." So we used his sound system for a bit. So
and by the police and all that, was they real police or just actors?
No, they were actors. This was a acting.
And how did you get your name Blue in the film?
I think the character originally was supposed to be so dark that he was blue.
Right.
But obviously, I mean, they asked me in to come and to read, or really to have a word and see if I was interested in doing it, because I think they knew that I had the experience, and obviously through the music as well. So. And
I read that one of the scenes in the film, I think it was in Deptford High Street, that you was filming, and there was a horse that was like running down the high street, so they had to cut it and reshoot.
It's possible. I don't remember it right now, but
because back then there was like a rag and bone men.
Yeah. No, a lot of those things could happen, and I'm not remembering it. So it could have been in a day when I wasn't there, or they were doing something. But it was still back in the days where you still had a lot of the rag and bone guys. Yeah.
And what was the main reason for the film being called Babylon?
Because of Babylon, the whole. That's the.
Because I know back in the day,
spiritual name for that system. So it was ideal, Babylon. Growing up in Babylon.
Right, yeah. And the soundtrack was also pivotal in that film. I mean, you know, it really kind of gelled the whole thing together.
Dennis Bovell, he's, you know, he's a maestro, he's a master.
Big shout out to Dennis.
Master. Yeah, big shout. Yeah, big shout.
Big shout out to Dennis. And as we said, you're going to be playing the Jazz Cafe in July. 18th of July.
18th of July, yeah.
And also, Babylon's now got a US release.
Yeah.
What was the story behind it not getting a release?
They just weren't ready for it. You know, they weren't ready for it. And actually, while I was there, we did a Q&A. And this, she was an elderly white woman. And she said it was a stabbing. And I went, why with the stabbing? I said, all these films that people have had more, you know.
Yeah.
Then she said a simple thing that was kind of like just made sense of it all. She said, the underdog. You know, if the underdog fights back, this is where the fear comes in. You know, one underdog fights back and they go, oh, okay, right, we can do it. So she kind of explained, and I would imagine at that time, they just weren't ready for it, you know? I mean, there's a lot of history in the States of how they treated people. I mean, do you know what I mean? It's... Yeah. I know they're policing the world right now, but sometimes they have to stop and they have to realise that, look, you know, we got a lot to answer for.
Actually, that was going to be one of my questions to you, Brinsley, is like, how would you say London, or you know, how things have changed since the 60s and 70s? Would you say things have changed quite a bit?
A lot of things have changed, but a lot of things remain the same under the surface. You know, technology's changed, fashion's changed, but the fundamental structure is still set in stone.
Can you give me some of your kind of biggest highlights so far?
Well, do you know what? I've got to say, my highlights have been the birth of my children. I've been blessed with quite a few. So that life, and, you know, my siblings, the sons and daughters of my children, and of my brothers and sisters, they were highlights that you can't, you know, they stand above everything. Obviously, you know, meeting my, you know, favourite artists and things like that. Nelson Mandela, someone I would have loved to have met. He was my all-time hero, would have been Muhammad Ali. I would love to have met him. I never had the chance to meet him personally. Other things, you know, that having a #1 record, meeting Princess Diana. I've been awarded the MBE. I mean,
yeah, I was going to say, how did you get the MBE?
Well, that was for you know, people put you forward for it, so I give thanks for that. Yeah. And it's one of those things, you decide whether you want to do it or you don't. But I think for the amount of people that came and said this made us feel like, yeah, this was ours, that it was a possibility. You know, you are from the street, we know you, and for you to do that, that feels like it's ours as well. And to be honest, the day that my mother had, you know, we were there, and they came. The next thing I know, my mother was given a tour of the castle. Wow. So, you know,
that must have been amazing.
It was a day for her, and for her to say, well, I never ever thought in all my life that I would be in a place like this or be here, or do you know what I mean? I mean, as a son, you just, you know, it just touches you.
Yeah. And we're sort of coming to nearly to the end now.
And another highlight of my life, I have to say, this goes to my father. I remember saying that my first memory of when Aswad really kind of came to the fore, we were playing in the Odeon, which was in Harlesden, used to be an old cinema, and we were playing with Gladiators, Reggae Regulars and Aswad, and we ended up going on first. And I remember in the middle of the show, I walked over to the guitarist and I said, look, can you play this phrase? And I said, bum, 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 da, 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 da. And he went, yeah, okay. And a few minutes later, I went to the audience, sing this, da, 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 da. I went again. I said, come on again. And I went, Donald Griffiths. And he played the most amazing solo. And I remember saying to my father, this was the time that, you know, I thought people started to listen to the band. And he went, yeah, I was there.
Wow. Yeah, that's a huge highlight. Yeah. And if you wasn't, you know, say if you wasn't an actor or a musician, what kind of path do you reckon you would have gone down?
I would have loved to have been a barrister.
Really?
Whether I would have made it, but that's the other thing that I would have loved to have done. I would have loved to have gone into court and fought battles and won, you know.
Yeah.
That I think would have been. Whether I would have done that, because do you know what happens by the time you actually leave school? You haven't got the qualifications. You haven't, you haven't got. But in hindsight, it's one of the things that I would have loved to have done. Been a barrister.
Barrister, yeah. And Brinsley, what are you up to nowadays? I mean, you're still making music.
Still making music. I'm in the process of doing the new album, the Tough Gong Sessions. Just spent nearly 4 months in Jamaica. That's out is with David Hines, lead singer of Steel Pulse, and David Hines, Dennis Bovill and myself have a group that they're calling a super group called Three the Hard Way. But Steel Pulse are working on their album now, so we will get back to Three the Hard Way probably 2020. So yeah, coming out's the album. We've still got the tour going, and yeah, life is, you know, you got health and strength, so you know. And as I say, I don't like to have a full glass. I like to have it, you know, you give that and it's a little bit empty, so you've still got room for more and still enjoying playing music and doing what I'm doing.
And you know, I'm gutted you didn't bring your guitar, because I would have loved to for you have done a little session in the back.
I would have done a session, funny enough, I had it yesterday, but I've got this new thing called a guitar lele.
Yeah, is that like a smaller version of a guitar?
It's a small of a guitar. It's not a guitar and it's not a ukulele. You know, it's about 5 octaves above the normal guitar, but it's 6 strings, and I usually have it all over with me.
And it's easier to carry as well.
Oh, so much. You can sit in the car, you can sit in the front seat of a car and play.
Yeah, well, no, my friend, John, he's a cab driver, he's got one in the front of his cab, because he's also guitar all the time.
Yeah,
he's
and
always
with
singing
this guitar lately, you get it, and you can just, I love it.
Because it's so like easy just to, you know.
Well, you're unfortunate. The next time I hail your cab,
we've got to do a part 2.
I'll have it with me.
We'll have to do a part 2. And last one, Brinsley, before we nip you back to the station, what is there kind of like a positive message that you can give the younger generation?
These are words that were given to me by my father. Life is a gift, right? And your gift is the way you live your life. You know, that's your gift to others. So live your life positive, be a positive person, and give, because it's returned to you.
Brinsley, an absolute amazing interview. I'm totally, once again, I'm totally blown away.
Thank you, man.
And listen, it's an absolute honour to have you in the cab.
Well, thank you. And as we were saying before, I think for yourself as well, you're doing something.
Yeah.
You're not only out there being a public figure, you know, driving people around, but you've got an idea and you're working on it. So,
well, that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, the reason I'm doing this is because there's so many unsung heroes and people with really unbelievable history out there, and their story has to be told.
Well, and it was for you to come up with the idea to do it. So. Yeah. All strength to you, man.
No, Brinsley.
Take care.
Absolute honour, my man, and we're going to get you back to the station.
Okay.
I hope you enjoyed this as well.
I did. Well, I'm sitting here, otherwise I'd have been going, no, I've got to go now.
Right, let's get you back.
Oh, brilliant.
Good luck, my man.
Brilliant.